Okay, I think we're live. Welcome, everybody. I am excited about this one. We have Jack Levin here with us and lots of topics to cover. I kind of want to let this go where it does, kind of organically. Oops. Helps if I turn off that. But this should be good. So, yeah, we were just talking a little bit about Zen in the green room and some of the I guess principles of Zen and the staking of Zen, the forced waiting, and the fact that while the price is down, the minters are still in profit. And I think we should get into that. I do kind of want to ask you, Jack, what are you most interested and excited about right now?
What am I excited about right now? There's so many exciting things happening. Well, I think one of the most exciting things in the crypto universe was the Ordinals and BRC20 launch. Because if you think about it, Bitcoin has existed for a long time. And the blockchain really hasn't changed that much. I mean, they went from smaller blocks to bigger blocks. They changed their accounting schemas. They went into Taproot, and there was like segregated witness and a bunch of other things. But Ethereum was always a leading type of universe where you could develop a lot of interesting things, programmable money, which we're obviously very familiar and love. But with Bitcoin, the pivotal moment in March of this year was the segregated witness data storage within the block was actually now able to represent digital artifacts that are actually maybe collectible and valuable. And comparatively speaking, with NFTs on EVMs, which I mean really only been around for like 3 or 4 years, they got hot, I think, in 2021, 2020 maybe. Most of the NFTs are images that live off chain.
Right.
And the reason is because it's so expensive to store data on Ethereum. It's like incredibly expensive. And when it comes to segregated witness data storage and storing ordinals, which are also a type of an NFT on Bitcoin, you just don't pay as much. You're actually pay very little in terms of storing the representative data on chain. And so that's actually very important. It's important for data to be on chain so that the digital artifacts that you're end up trading or collecting do not ever change. Like nobody changes the URL on you, or somebody's web server crashes or whatever, or gets hacked, and then all you have is a pointer to a data that you thought you had like a Bored Ape, but it's actually a bored pixel right now, a bored broken pixel. But with Bitcoin, I think the epic part is that it's all on chain. Like it's immutable. It's forever edged on the chain, and it will be there forever. And of course, Bitcoin being, I guess, the most distributed, the most secure, the most valuable ecosystem in the world today when it comes to crypto, that was a huge tectonic shift in that universe. And of course, the BRC20s, like right afterwards, basically a representation of a token that's just a piece of text, is also very, very exciting. And just to give you some numbers, BRC20s launched in March, and then in April, it was $1 billion worth of assets based on their market cap. It has sold off like 70% since the top. But we're talking about 30 to 45 days from inception to $1 billion in the market cap. A true market cap, by the way, not like something pre-minted, pre-mined, and very much fake, which is incredible. It was in the middle of a bear market too. And
Right.
so that is certainly very exciting to me, and I think it has a very, very bright future when it comes to the next cycle. So because there will be more and more and more and more development happening there. And also, like, if you think about it, so like let's say that you're in Bitcoin. How do you hold your Bitcoin? So you'll have to have some sort of a desktop wallet. And could be Sparrow, could be like something else, and could be Bitcoin Core. And if you look at those wallets, they're not very user friendly. I mean, like, especially Bitcoin Core. I have it and I'm kind of used to it, but it's crap. It's not at all interesting. You can't do much with it. I mean, Sparrow is a little bit better, but it's almost too complex for a regular person to figure out what the hell to do with their Bitcoin. And we always talk about self-custody and self-sovereignty and holding your assets in your own wallet.
Right.
But if things are so complicated and so convoluted and so error prone, you're almost like, okay, well, maybe I should just like store my Bitcoin on Coinbase. But then Coinbase has this provision that should they get sued and have to defend themselves, all of your crypto that you store with them will actually go towards defending the lawsuit, because they have a stock that's trading, and that's actually what's important, not the crypto that
Right.
you're storing. Like they literally tweeted last May of 2022. I think they said, "Hey, by the way, we have to say it. If we end up being sued, then you may not get your crypto back." So terrible overall. But here's what happens in March and April. So because of this hyperactive engagement with BRC20s and ordinals, all of a sudden everybody wants to create a web wallet similar to MetaMask. And so now there are those wallets like Unisat, which I have installed, and there is something else. I mean, there's like 3 more, and they're also user friendly, like literally better than MetaMask. It's cheaper to send transactions when it comes to ordinals across the Bitcoin blockchain. It's now easier to transfer Bitcoin between wallets and between users. It's on-chain, it's secure, you're keeping your seed phrase. You'll have to install any desktop software. So it's pretty great. So what I'm saying is that the sort of innovation that came from BRC20s and ordinals actually pushed the ecosystem development more towards kind of like this user-friendly tools that weren't available before. And again, like we use MetaMask all the time, right? But MetaMask also sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like, it's very glitchy, and sometimes it doesn't work. But still, it was still better because it was a web wallet, and
Right.
it has this integration with the hardware wallet, so on and so forth. Where Bitcoin guys were like, okay, this is our swimming pool. Nobody come and pee in our pool ever. We're not gonna even do anything that's supposed to onboard the masses just because we have this like almost like an exclusive club. But with ordinals, all of a sudden everybody's invited to a party, and some of the Bitcoiners, the hardcore people, they hate it, but it actually makes the whole ecosystem better in terms of just accessibility to Bitcoin that we didn't have before. So that's super exciting to me.
So there is the VMPX, which is a BRC20. Is there, since that space is like a lot of crypto innovating, is there a concern that different types of ordinals or ways of doing things would compete with each other? Like if there's the VMPX bridge, if there's a section of those ordinals that are unique in some way or some other way of doing the same thing, is there will that bridge always, does it seem likely that it will work with all of this new asset class on Bitcoin, if that makes sense? Does the differences between them matter, and will they still be able to use the bridge, do you think?
You're saying if there was another bridge?
Well, is there a need for another bridge? Like because I think this is not an area of my expertise, but there's more than just BRC20s. I don't know the names of the others, but there's, I don't know, like
BRC20s
BRC65.
are BRC20s are, or everything is an ordinal,
Okay.
and any BRC20, ORC20, all of it is falls in the umbrella of ordinals. So all of it is a
Okay.
pieces of data that's inscribed
Yes.
onto the Bitcoin block in a transaction on a Satoshi that points to the data area of the segregated witness. Can't believe I just said a lot, but anyway. So your question is like, is it all compatible? I mean, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, like, I think we should have many bridges, and I think they all should be compatible. I mean, there's really, and the question is, okay, bridge to where, right? So
Right.
bridge to EVMs. That's what I have envisioned from the very beginning, because I felt that there's a natural affinity for people in the communities on Ethereum trading um, ERC20 contracts, and they would naturally be inclined to understand BRC20s too. Like,
Right.
for example, on an Ethereum, let's say that I have Shiba Inu, I wanted to um, trade it for Buffy. I should be
Yeah.
able to do it in one transaction without jumping through hoops of any kind, which is totally possible because you can have a bridge. And what we're doing is we're actually working with a team using VMPX as a stable coin bridge. It's stable with itself. So we have the EVMPX and we have the BVMPX. The smart contract that is being developed will swap or can swap BVMPX to EVMPX and back and forth. And what will happen under the hood is that if you're bringing Buffy from Bitcoin,
Yeah.
the bridge will swap it into BVMPX and then swap it to EVMPX, and then you will end up with, let's say, Shiba Inu on Ethereum, if that's what you want to do. So the concept is borrowed from LayerZero Stargate Finance. So what
Right.
LayerZero Stargate Finance is an atomic swap system, and they're using stable coins to swap everything. So they have stable to stable swaps. So like USDT, USDC from, like, let's say, Polygon and Ethereum and let's say Binance. But what happens is that they partner with swaps like, or dexes like Sushi Swap, and then on Sushi Swap, when you have liquidity, you can say I'm swapping Shiba Inu into USDT, and then USDT gets transferred across Stargate Finance to Binance, and there you get the baby Doge. And but you do it with one click. Like, you don't even know that you have sold your Shiba Inu for USDT, and then USDT got swapped. But the magic of atomic swaps really happens across stable coins. Now, those stable coins are called stable coins because they're stable with the dollar. The dollar itself is unstable because of inflation, and so people think, okay, well, it is stable to the universe the outside of crypto, which is like fiat. But what we're doing with VMPX, we're basically saying we do not care about fiat. We just care about VMPX being stable with itself between
Right.
between EVM and non-EVM chains like Bitcoin.
So from the potential user standpoint, they'll have whatever. I'll try to create a hypothetical scenario. They'll have whatever BRC20 they want, aside from, let's say it's not VMPX, and they want to get something over on, let's just say, Ethereum. They could use the VMPX bridge to get that other the ERC20 that they want,
Right.
without necessarily even having to understand or pay attention to the reality that what is bridging them is VMPX.
Yeah.
So they'll
That's
basically
exactly
just
right. So like,
yeah.
when you use Stargate Finance, the way that it looks to you is that you go to Sushi Swap and you say that I'm using XSwap, that's what they call it, and you're swapping from Ethereum to Binance, or from Binance back to Ethereum, and you're just choosing the assets. Like, if you're coming from Binance and you have Baby Doge and you want to get Shiba Inu, you're basically saying I'm selling at the current rate Baby Doge against Shiba Inu, and I'm getting Shiba Inu on Ethereum. and you do not even know what's happening under the hood. But under the hood, the baby Doge gets sold for USDT,
Right.
and then it gets transferred using Stargate Finance or LayerZero protocol, and then the LayerZero protocol actually buys you the Shiba Inu on Ethereum. So same way with VMPX, you will be greeted by a web page where it will say, okay, connect your MetaMask wallet, and then indicate what kind of tokens you would like to swap for BRC20s. And you just click, yes, I want to swap that for that. And possibly, because obviously the Ethereum address is not necessarily the Taproot address, not compatible, but you can reuse your seed phrase. Like, for example, whether you have 12 or 24 word seed phrase on Ethereum, you can actually generate another account that's Taproot on the BRC20 side. And so you can say that I am actually transferring ERC20 token, and I'm wrapping it as a BRC20 token. So that's not even a swap yet. It's just kind of like a wrap.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's between you and I, you can say, hey, I am willing to sell you some of the Buffy BRC20s, give me some Shiba, and all I have to do is specify your Taproot address where I am transferring stuff to you, and you specify my Ethereum address and vice versa. So that's how the bridging would work. So there's two ways, right? So there's the transfer, which is you're transferring for yourself, and you're the owner on
Yes.
both sides. Or you can say, I want to use a DEX that actually has the liquidity on the BRC20 that is willing to accept ERC20 tokens for the trade. So that's the holy grail.
How does gas work, given that you're dealing with two layer ones with different types of gas? How does that work?
So the bridge will take care of that.
Okay. So the user doesn't necessarily have to have both, have both.
No, so the bridge will take a fee. So like if you're an
Yes.
Ethereum user, and first you're executing an Ethereum contract, so it costs gas, but it will ask you a little bit more as a transfer fee, and the transfer fee will cover the Bitcoin side. So it will convert to Satoshis across the bridge. Or rather, the bridge will say, okay, is this person depositing enough fees to complete the transaction? Yes, they do. And those fees are coming with Ethereum, essentially. So there's like an Ethereum contract on the bridge side that takes your Ethereum and then says, okay, given that the Oracle tells me that Ethereum is worth, let's say, $700, you deposited 0.01 Ethereum, so that's like, let's say, $17. Is it enough to buy Satoshis with? And the bridge will have Satoshis, and it will look at the oracles and say, okay, given that there is enough fees, I will proceed with the transaction because the user has committed the funds that we can then have an ability to turn into something else or make liquid.
What do we have any idea of what the fees would be for VMPX stakers? I'm guessing it would be a flat fee, a flat percentage rate of something. Do you have any idea how the fees would work for VMPX stakers?
So we actually don't know yet, but it is likely that the VMPX stakers should be able to choose 1% all the way to 0.1 if they wanted to, based on I guess the volume they wanted to be exposed to or something like that. And this is something that's always up for discussion.
Right.
But the idea is that if you have eVMPX or BVMPX, you should be able to stake it and provide liquidity and participate in enabling ability to transfer or swap assets across chains.
And then would the fees to the VMPX stakers be in whatever tokens were being transferred across the bridge? Or would
Those
it?
fees should be paid with VMPX, with either
Okay.
BVMPX or EVMPX. You will not be getting other people's tokens. So what will happen is that if you're coming from Ethereum, you will end up spending Ethereum fees. Using Gwei, right, or whatever
Hmm.
the denomination is you choose. But it is a portion of Ethereum. What will happen is that the bridge will then pay you with the VMPX that's sitting in the buffer there waiting. So the Ethereum the bridge will sell you the VMPX that you will get paid with.
Okay, so VMPX stakers, their staking fee will be VMPX. They're
Yes,
staking.
that
Okay.
is a generally accepted convention,
Okay.
and that's how Stargate Finance also works. I think you get fees. I mean, if you're staking stable coins, you always get stable coins back.
Right. Okay.
So
So you
so
get like kind, like whatever the bridge and the liquidity that you're providing there is, that's what you would get back. At
right,
least.
even though it is the convention to do exactly that, it is necessarily may not be the optimal way.
Mm,
Some people, I mean, I'm very much pro-choice in this case. People should be
okay.
able to choose what they want to do, what they want to receive. Like for example, with Uniswap V3, when you provide liquidity,
Right.
you can say, here's my Shiba and here's my ETH, and if people buying Shiba from you, then you're getting ETH fees, and if they're selling Ethereum, or rather selling their Shiba across your liquidity pool, then you're actually getting a little bit of Shiba too. So I mean, there's like no reason to say that okay, it's either this way or the highway. I mean, both options should be available for the people,
Wow.
whatever works better.
So, speaking of VMPX, there is the proposed idea that there's an allocation of XN for holders of VMPX to swap at a rate of 1 VMPX for 3 XN. Do you have any idea or thoughts right now on how that would work? I've heard things like it may be somewhat related to how long you stake your VMPX in the bridge may give you some time weighted allocation to the potentially 300 million XN allocation.
Yeah, so that's exactly right. So we thought about that the maximum conversion should be 1 to 3. So 1 VMPX should convert to 3 XN, but it should be linked to the duration of your staking. And we have it in the notes. Basically, we're saying that if you're staking for less than a year, the conversion is 1 to 1, and if you're staking
Ah,
for like 2 years, the conversion is 1 to 2. And if you're staking for 3 years, and don't quote me on that, obviously, I
yeah,
know
yeah.
we're recording this, but I'm actually like literally a table that we're debating, like what would be the best outcome.
Okay.
Now, I do want to say that everybody's very, very much excited about XN, and 99 or 90% of the time, anybody asks me like, when's XN, right?
Yeah.
Uh, what I really like to say is I want to deliver technology and infrastructure that works really well, or at least I want to have confidence that this is coming and that will be available and it's going to be awesome.
Right.
I don't want to focus on the release of a token that promises amazing things but we haven't demonstrated yet.
Yeah.
So
Well,
so we have demonstrated Fastnet, and it's amazing. And if you look at Fastnet Explorer, you can see it has like millions and millions and millions of user accounts created, and it's super stable. It is incredible how well it works. The biggest challenge, and it's a challenge for all blockchains, is to deliver the bridge that works well and is safe. Because
yes.
if you think about it, what is the point of XN on Ethereum if you can't bridge it over, or can't bridge it over safely?
Right. Yeah.
So there is the speculative aspect of XN, such as there is this thing that's coming, and therefore everybody wants to pile in. And
Yes.
and let's be honest, uh, people will sell the news the same way that they sold the news when the Pulse chain came out. So
Right.
the Pulse chain was announced, and the hex went from 2.5 cents to 12, and then that was the peak. It was sold off, and it never reached that point again. And of course, on the day of Pulse chain launch, it had a huge dump.
Right.
So
It's a common trend in
yeah,
crypto, and we've had some recent examples.
selling the news is a viable strategy, because you want to front run everybody else who is buying. And
Right.
when I say front run, I don't mean it in a bad and a scammy way. I'm talking about sound financial investing decisions. If something's coming and you're early in the cryptocurrency or wherever the asset you're in, and then it's coming, it's the anticipation grows, it gets released, and then snap, whoever held the longest, they're like, okay, time to take the profit. So that is great for people that actually do that. It's not great for everyone else, though. So that's kind of like the interesting challenge, is that I'm not saying that pumps are bad, but they have to happen for the good reasons, right?
Yeah.
And so my thinking always was that if we keep demonstrating technology, we can actually build a solid baseline of what the value of XN should be. And right now, we actually have had a bit of a breakthrough with LayerZero. They actually reached out to us and they said that, hey, we really probably should partner because you have Zen everywhere.
Yeah. That's pretty
And
cool.
and that's what we're working on. We're working on partnering with LayerZero, enabling all the Zen transfers to happen across all chains. So like we want BZen to be tradable on Ethereum, and we want MZen to be tradable on Ethereum, and vice versa. And that's what we're working on. We want to turn it up.
Can
And that's
you
super cool because
go ahead?
I think LayerZero is like one of those technologies that's actually will do better than the rest of the bridging tech. That's been pretty much every bridge got hacked.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that LayerZero will never be hacked, but they're doing something different in the way that their technology works. And what's really funny is like there was this chain called Harmony. They got hacked really badly, and they're switching to LayerZero. And then I think OmniBridge or Allbridge, I forget what the name was. One of the owners of of that bridge got arrested, and he held the keys, and the bridge has shut down. And so all of the chains that are using that bridge now are switching to LayerZero also. So I'm very bullish on that the crypto community in general is voting in favor of LayerZero. And I
Yeah.
always talked about LayerZero. I always liked it. I played with it a long time ago, and I think the people behind the tech are very, very smart and quite capable. And so that's where we want X1 to be. We want X1 to be connected to the rest of the blockchains using LayerZero technology. And I want to demonstrate that. And now that we have traction with their team, we're moving faster in terms of implementation.
Can you explain, like, really simply, if it's possible, what is the difference between the bridges that have been hacked, the majority of the bridges with wrapping tokens and things like that, versus the LayerZero way of reaching the same result, but it through a different method? Does that make sense?
Sure. So a lot of bridges don't use atomic swaps. And atomic swaps is a method of lock and release or burn and mint, and it's done in a different type of way. But all it is just a different logic, the way that it's done. Now, everything that has a password can be hacked, and obviously, LayerZero secures their infrastructure with cryptography, and cryptography has keys.
Right.
So there is a possibility that they can also be hacked, or they can have a bad actor on their team that steals everybody's funds. That is also possible.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, there's no silver bullet. Now the question is how do we navigate this environment where the system is actually built to be more resistant to hacking? So you have to balance centralization versus decentralization versus node collusion versus the actual implementation of the cryptography itself. There is a number of really good videos that their founder has showing how easy it is to swap and move things. So, like for example, using Plasma Bridge for Polygon takes about 20 minutes to get in, and it takes about maybe an hour or two to get out, and the fees are huge. And Plasma Bridge has been around. Not really great technology because of the way that the tokens are getting locked. Like there's like another there's another approach with layer 2 chains like Optimism. Have you ever played with Optimism? You know, it takes 7
No.
days to get your funds out.
Oh my.
Yeah, and it isn't because of the tech. It's actually because of like they're running verification, and there's this like cool off period where if somebody's really gets hacked, there's a buffer of time that extra uh, extra time is given to verify everything before actually sending any funds out. Getting in is fast, so you can move from Ethereum to Optimism very, very quickly, but getting out is 7 days. And by the way, this is the same thing on base chain. So base chain works exactly the same. They're using Optimism stack, so they're just following the same convention. So there's like many different ways that the security can be achieved, and LayerZero using this third way, which they call atomic swaps. And it's a set of, the way that I understand it, it's a set of validators that they're calling relay nodes. It relays header information between the chains, not the actual blocks. Like they don't have to sync blocks with full data. So that's what makes their chain or their version of a chain that runs their bridge much faster. And the decisions can be made faster, and yet the security isn't compromised. But then again, like I'm even though I know quite a bit about it, I'm not the ultimate expert. There's this founder, I know him as Primordial. He can explain that really well. So he's the
Yeah.
LayerZero guy.
Which is cool. Like that's a benefit of partners is, you know, maybe they are spending their focus and time on that, and mutually beneficial. We can use their expertise in this area. We understand enough to know that this is potentially a good way to do it. Our tokens being used there helps them. That use case helps us because it's an asset and adds more value to our system. I feel like it's potentially similar with Libre. Is that kind of how you see it, where these people are building something that they're already spending the time and effort and focus on doing this one thing, and us joining with them, it's mutually beneficial?
Well, everyone has strengths and weaknesses. So Libre guys deeply understand the first principles of crypto. They deeply understand self-custody, and they understand how ordinals and BRC20s work. And their chain is also pretty amazing in terms of how fast it is. And if you ever play with their wallet can send you Bitcoin within seconds. Pretty much in less than a second.
Yeah.
You can do a transfer. And it's better than Lightning Network, because Lightning Network is mostly custodial, where Libre chain actually runs in a decentralized manner. So they have the validators. It's based on EOS. So EOS,
Right.
Actually, EOS Foundation has renamed their blockchain to Antelope, just because ES
Yep.
had a lot of this sort of baggage of like what happened to ES and SEC shenanigans and all that. So Antelope is an open source blockchain that has very unique properties that is optimized for speed and performance. It's actually mostly gasless, but gas can be introduced, and so those guys just decided to come up with a chain like Libre. And what's really amazing about them is that they have had a fair launch. So they minted the Libre tokens, but they don't actually pre-minted it for themselves. It got locked into a liquidity pool. So that's what's different about them. And you can obviously investigate and explore their take on that. So
does Libre, are they paid from a portion of is the Libre team paid from a portion of inflation or something like that? I think because I think EOS is.
Yeah. Well, from what I understand, that there is some inflation of Libre, and validators do get paid, and they're running their own validators, so they inflate the supply a little bit, but they have the concept of halvening. That's there's a time period.
Oh wow.
That actually reduces the payout.
Interesting.
So and the other thing that's interesting about them is that Antelope was or EOS was designed. I think Dan Larimer is the dude who basically invented the whole concept. Basically, it's running on the delegated proof of stake, where the validators get voted in by the community of members that stake Libre.
Yeah.
And so people can vote in the validators, and there cannot be more than 21 active block producers. So 21 block producers. And why 21? Well, it's 21 because you actually don't need more to scale the transactions and be fast. And by the way, most of the chains don't need a lot of nodes, really. Like, for example, Phantom is running on 50 nodes, I believe, maybe 60 now. And it's faster than Ethereum by a mile. The difficulty that people have their heads to wrap around across is that the fact is that there's so many miners in Bitcoin, and there's like 500,000 nodes that are block producers for Ethereum. Right. Like, how does it make any sense that you can have chains that work faster with smaller number of validators? And where's the decentralization? So the way to think about it is that there is the technological approach to validators. Like, for example, it's impossible for Ethereum validators to collude with each other because there's just way too many of them. But then there's this thing called social contract. So like you have decentralization due to the fact that people hold, for example, a token like Libre, and it's worth money to them, and they don't have to be the validators themselves, but they can delegate their tokens for the validators to produce yield that they realize as an APY or whatever, like the yield for yearly annual yield. And if they don't choose the right actors, the yield gets slashed and they actually don't make enough money. So the monetary incentive is definitely there, but the delegation part basically says that if you have enough delegators that delegate the funds, the voting mechanism actually allows the kind of like this virtual decentralization that's done across the economic spectrum and not necessarily the technological spectrum. Meaning that you wouldn't need to have as many nodes that like actually represent real hardware.
Right.
And by the way, the bigger the blockchain is in terms of nodes, the slower it becomes, because you need to reach you have to then reach the consensus across let's say a majority of the nodes. And how quickly can you do it if you have unlimited number of nodes, right? So there's various ways to put patches around it. Like you can say that, well, there's really needs to be some sort of a supermajority, but supermajority actually is not equal to the number of nodes. It can be this confederation of nodes that are like super cool, but then you're back to the delegated proof of stake, because you're basically solving this technological decentralization of having too many nodes with an abstract social contract. So you may as well not even have that many nodes. Like, why would you need it if you're already circumventing the fact that you're short circuiting? You're basically saying my blockchain is too slow and useless and is losing its value because of that. So we have to now go back to the social conventions of trust and voting with the economic energy.
One of the problems I feel like I've seen with EOS and the delegated proof of stake is, some people call it like the problem of Pareto, where some people within almost any system own a significant portion of supply, and it ends up being certain block producers can be voted in by exchanges because they have so much tokens, and then the exchanges can kind of like incentivize certain attributes in the system that's not not necessarily actually decentralized.
Yes, and so I think, and I might get this wrong, but in their particular case, the amount of Libre tokens that you have does not necessarily means that you are short circuiting everybody else in the community. So I think that there is like this statistical approach to that, where it isn't the number of votes in your wallet. It's basically the members that been voted before, and they have the social standing. So you can't just like come to the network and say, okay, I have unlimited money, I'm going to buy everything, and then I'll have the biggest votes and I will take over the network. That it would be difficult to do with the Libre setup. Now, what's really interesting is Binance is a centralized chain, and people love being on it anyway, right?
Totally.
So the question then becomes, okay, if you're there to make money, do you really care about decentralization? Because I have seen that the chains that are the most decentralized suck the most, actually.
I agree.
That
was something I observed relatively early on in my crypto journey, is some of these tokens that to me seemed to have the best fundamental values when it came to things like decentralization did not attract community and did not attract price go up.
Right. And so I think what's like, it's really interesting. It's a mind twister. So ultimately, what brings value among humans is social agreement. It's not the technology. You cannot say that the technology will solve all of your problems, because you may have the most amazing decentralized network and nobody's using it because nobody can actually agree what's best for the network. There's just too many moving parts.
They don't understand it. Like, there still needs to be a kind of a sales pitch of sorts that get, like you're saying, it still has to appeal to the people. If it doesn't, because they haven't heard about it, or no one's explaining it in a way that it appeals to them, then it will go nowhere. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Sure. But like, if you think about it, so Binance chain is pretty active, and a lot of people are loving their experience on it because it's fast, it's cheap. I can't say that it's like it's a leader in NFTs or anything, because the NFT market there is really still being developed. But it's full of degens that love shitcoins, and they just a lot of developers actually end up launching on Binance chain just because
that's where the people
Ethereum's too expensive, and they can address a huge Asian market. And that's interesting. So let's do a thought experiment. Let's say that Elon Musk launches a chain.
Yes.
And he owns like 90% of it.
Yeah.
And the other 10 is like community driven.
Yeah.
Would you be on that chain and be comfortable?
Well, I can answer that multiple ways. One, I think it's hard for me to lie because I've had a very similar circumstance to that, being in the Richard Hart ecosystem, where a very large percentage of the tokens are owned by at least an entity, and I have participated. So, and then even just looking at it anew, because Elon Musk is behind it, and I do generally have optimism for things that he's a part of, it would be very tempting, and I would seriously consider being a part of it, I think. Although, I do have a problem. I don't see it necessarily as an automatically good thing, like, all of the things equal. Like, it's if the intent is decentralization, if this is the whole reason we're in this game and it's not decentralized, I don't, I don't necessarily like it either.
Sure. So what if there were 10 Elon Musks and there were bridges between all of them and they all were different people, and you would have this like confederation of this by itself it's decentralized, but you get to be on one chain or the other.
So it would be, any individual chain is owned primarily by one individual, but the ease of escaping one country and going to another is there. Like, you can always move.
Full
So it's
liquidity.
just
Yeah.
through liquidity, so you can hop around, and there is a type of freedom, I guess, baked into the system. I mean, I'm not sure exactly what you're asking, but to me that is an interesting picture, and it is a type of decentralization in, if you looked at it as a whole, like if liquidity is what you're after, if trading particular tokens is what you're after, one particular layer one universe may be centralized, but you have the ability to move around between all of them, and as long as no one individual owns all of them, there is some amount of decentralization when you look at the system as a whole. Is that
Right.
kind
I
of
mean,
what you're
like,
saying? Yeah.
sure. I mean, if you look at our planet, so we have different countries. We
Yeah.
have the European Union, we have United States, we have Bulgaria. I mean, anywhere you look, I mean, you can technically move to any country. Now,
Yeah.
the planet itself is decentralized because you have an option of moving.
Right.
But once you move into a particular country, you now have to follow their rules and laws and regulations.
Right.
Um, I mean, and you can move up or you can move down. And I mean, I have seen people moving to Costa Rica, which is, I guess, a country, right? Now, why do they do that? Well, they get some sort of elements there that they can't get in the United States. Maybe it's taxation, maybe it's something else. Maybe it's doing ayahuasca, right? Or
Yeah.
summon the shamanic spirits and not be persecuted of psychedelics being Schedule 1 and in many other countries. But Costa Rica is cool with that. So I mean, that's also kind of like the sort of freedom. But then they may have like other restrictive laws that you will not agree necessarily with, but you're okay with it because you made the choice. Some things are more important than for other people than the rest of us, right? And so what I'm saying is, like, back to blockchains, there is this concept that uh, decentralization through technology actually means value, and that is actually not true. I
So
don't
would you
believe
say
it to be true.
value, it means value in token price go up? Like, I agree
So
that they
uh,
don't, decentralization does not mean price go up, but do you mean value in a bigger, like,
so
sense as
let's
well?
so let's uh let's talk about liquidity, for example. If
Okay.
there's no liquidity, there's no value.
Yeah.
So
You can't do anything.
because you can't buy and you cannot sell. So liquidity is a better measure. And where does liquidity come from? Well, generally, it comes from the fact that there's more people getting into a particular ecosystem and they're excited about it, which actually almost always means that there is a way to sell assets for profit. or trade those assets. The bigger liquidity we have, then the better we are. And so what's interesting about Zen specifically is that it's on 12 different EVM chains, plus number 13 being Bitcoin in the form of VMPX. You could argue the blockchains are like countries, and you can choose where you want to be because of the particular affinity. Like some people like Avalanche, and some people like Phantom, and some people like Binance, and they're just having loads of fun there with Zen. And so you could argue that because Zen is everywhere, it has the opportunity to be the most liquid, the most accessible representation of fair crypto, or representing first principles. And so that is ultimately why we're on all the different chains. So rather than saying this is the one we choose because it's the best, we actually say that we don't know what is the best, and we'll let people decide. And I think that has worked really well, because first of all, every time we go to a chain, we make news. Like, for example, on Coinbase base chain, I think if we look at we should like share a screen. Can you share a screen and bring up Block Scout for base? Because a lot of people.
Can you share your screen? Do I have to?
Yeah, sure. Hold on one sec. Let me bring up a tab. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go to base Block Scout, and this is exciting and interesting because that chain is fairly young. Their team is strong, but Zen came to the chain just like basically 3 weeks after they launched. Okay, so I'm hitting present, sharing a screen. All right, base mainnet statistics. So there we go.
Okay, cool. I'm going to add that. Here we go. Sweet.
All right. So here's where I am. So I am on base.blockscout.com/stats. And you can just go to Google and type it in, and you will be on this page. And so what I'm seeing here, I'm seeing there's 20 million transactions. There's 13 million addresses, and that many contracts. So 11 million and 11 million spot 27. Okay, so just a little bit over 11 million. Now, this is what I want to do. I want to scroll down to the contract growth. So like, can we do full screen? Can you see this?
Yeah, I can.
All right. So here's base chain before Zen. We're talking about total number of contracts. So you can see that they launched like right there somewhere just before that. And then 63,000, 163,000. So that's where things are getting. I think this could be the Frentech launch, by the way, right here. And so here it's sitting around and adding more contracts at a good pace. And then Zen launches. So we're at 240 right here. Look at the increase. So now we're at 3 million 4 days later, 4 million, 5 million, 5.5, 6.5, 7, 8, 9. This is all us. This is our ecosystem. So that's pretty epic. So now you could argue that if the baseline was about 240,000 and now we're at 11 million, what is the percentage? Is it like 98% of all contracts is now Zen on base? So that's great, right? That's a way to show that the activity has moved all of the metrics on their chain, and now people like Cointelegraph and Coin Market Cap guys and Coin Geckos of the world, they're looking at the chain and they're like, well, wait a second, what just happened?
Yeah.
They just launched and now they have 10 million contracts.
Yeah.
And they'll say, well, yeah, we have 10 million contracts. We're great.
Right.
And then people dig deeper and then they identify Zen being the community or Zenian community that did it.
Yeah.
So we're helping all of the chains to be more visible in the world, and they compensate our community by exposing and educating the world what we're all about. And that is why launching on the new chain always worked well, because it always brought more eyes and more people into community, which ultimately creates more liquidity, which ultimately creates more value.
And I think the creates more value through liquidity. I think the more people start coming into the system, I think that's an incredible value. I'm curious your thoughts on that. Like, and I say that partially because it's people that talk on Twitter, it's people that create YouTube channels, it's people that create side projects. People are one of the few things capable of original ideas, and the more people you can get into a system, the more potential originality and played out good explanations can happen. And the like, you know, DB Zen's awesome. It was a community member that wanted to use his creative way of adding value to the system that added value to the system. And as the more people we have, it fascinates me as an idea in itself, because I think it's impossible to quantify it, because you don't know. It's impossible to know what the next innovation will be and what the next creative idea any individual will think of. But you can have a probability that the more people there are, the more likely there will be a creative idea that is very valuable there. I'm
I
curious.
think, yeah.
Go ahead.
You curious? Finish your thought.
Well, I was just curious what you think about that, and it does seem implied to me in some of the way that you've approached things that it's backwards sometimes from the way that I see a lot of people do things, where I feel like there's more unknown in your approach, in the sense that let's build something based on principles, and they're principles that we believe in, that we think have value, but exactly how that will show valuable is not known. And then also I think I noticed this reversed approach from, like, it is intentional, but in a different way than I see a lot of people. It gives a lot of room for the creativity of individuals, and a lot of room for discovering better explanations along the way to add value to the system. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of like, I remember hearing Mark Zuckerberg talk about, like, I know, like people are interviewing Mark and they're like, you know, you're not making money off of this yet. And he's like, well, I know, like, if we can continue this growing, there's going to be plenty of ways to make money off of it. But the important thing right now is that we use Metcalfe's law or whatever, and just like keep growing our system, and then we can monetize it. And it, instead of focusing right off the bat, how can we make money today? Let's grow the system, let's build the thing, and then we'll figure out how to monetize it later. Which isn't how I feel like a lot of businesses run. They're much more specific on, here's the exact need, here's how we're going to solve it, and it's kind of a different approach. Okay, I'm kind of
Sure.
shooting all over the place with this, but
Sure. Yeah. I understand what you're saying. So on the subject of function.
yeah.
So, like, a lot of people don't get Zen's function and utility.
Yes.
They're like, where's the
Yeah.
utility, right?
That was a question I wanted to ask you, so this is good.
Right. Where's the utility? So the utility of anything else but Zen is often on a spectrum of selling the promise to a community, selling the tokens, raising money,
Yes.
and then you flip a coin, the team disappears with the money.
Yeah, right.
The utility is really just is a psyop where it may not even be malicious. Like all of a sudden you raise all that money, and then you think, well, wait a second, I already got all the money.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the business plan.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Right.
and then it's so hard for that team or that individual, especially if they're undoxed, not to disappear because they think, well, what is the point of doing anything? Let the community figure it out where we're gonna go. So,
Yep.
and there's no recourse. Nobody can find them. Now, the issue with this approach, and it goes beyond the scams. The issue is that crypto hasn't been designed to run it as a company. Like, you cannot say that I'm selling the tokens as shares of an idea that you get to participate based on my performance in the future. It's literally the definition of security. The Howey test specifically addresses that, and the Howey test says that if you sell shares of the that's linked to the performance of the work of others, specifically the team that's promising you something, they have to be registered, and you cannot sell it to non-accredited investors. But because you're often undoxed, you can just do it. Yeah. And nobody's going to stop you. And that has been the model with 90 to 95% of all the projects.
Right.
So that is the utilities to do that exactly. And so there's this person, very popular streamer, I think his name is Tom Bellew. So he sold some sort of epic keys as NFTs, and he promised a lot of value. As in, he promised that he basically says on his streams, it's not a thing that nobody knows. He says that I am building next Disney, and if you buy my NFTs, you're going to be in a special club when I build the next Disney. And so what happens is, during the bull market, he raised $30 million just selling the NFTs as securities. And I'm not saying that I am the lawyer and I am making a statement that his stuff is security, but certainly I don't think, and it's not a legal opinion, that it would pass a Howey test, because he literally said online on stream, if you buy this digital asset, when I'm going to make the next Disney, you will be a front row seater. And what happened is that obviously the top was when he sold it, and then nobody wanted to trade it, and people wanted their money back, and they all complained to him and to the SEC, and SEC came after him, and they signed, I guess, some sort of a non-fault agreement where he returns most of the money and stops doing things like that. Now, this isn't even crypto. This is using crypto as a layer to enable yourself to raise money to put in your own pocket for the future development of something that may or may not come. So going back to Zen as a utility, where's the utility in Zen? So Zen is very much like Bitcoin. So when Bitcoin came out in 2009, 2010, its utility was very basic: self-custody, decentralization, strong encryption, and self-sovereignty, and open source. That is the utility. The utility was to have something valuable that only you can own and nobody can take it away from you. And the network itself decides whether things are immutable or not. Nobody can change the rules. The rules are part of the code, and the code is law. That is the utility. So Zen's attempts to replicate the first principles of crypto, basing its token dynamics on the principles of Bitcoin and basically Satoshi's white paper. And so that is the utility. Now, that's what makes it so different than the rest of crypto. It is so pure because when it launched almost a year ago, October 8th, it launched with 0 Zen. No one had anything. No one had it. People just had their wallets, their gas money, the smart contract that they could interact with, and the community itself that formed around it brought that cryptocurrency into existence by simply interacting with the blockchain. And that what makes it so pure. It is, I would say, probably even more pure than Ethereum because Ethereum Foundation did have an ICO. They did sell Ethereum for Bitcoin. And I understand why they did it. But that actually makes them more pure of an element in crypto than Ethereum itself, just because it never had the ICO or the sale of any kind. It's just code that takes your gas. You yourself decide how long you want to wait for in terms of your mint term, and then you will get your Zen in the future. And that's the utility in itself. So the contract simplicity, its execution, its adherence to first principles is the utility.
How do you feel about Zen being on another on a layer 1 that is not Zen? Like, does that, because Zen indirectly, the ease of creating Zen is related to things aside from Zen. Like if that layer 1 has a lot of demand for whatever reason, the ease of creating Zen changes. And so to me, in a sense, it could interfere with the pureness of Zen because the supply of Zen is not directly related to the demand of Zen. It's related also to how hard it is to get, which is influenced by third parties. By the ability to claim and mint is cost is potentially influenced by whatever's going on in that layer 1 at the time. Does that?
But that's actually the best.
Okay, cool. Because that's one thing I kind of liked about Bitcoin, as opposed to a lot of these other competitors, is the demand and the transaction costs were still related to the demand for Bitcoin itself and not something else. But okay, you said you like this, so I'm really curious.
Yeah, that's the best part actually.
Okay.
And it's the best part when it comes to value. So we know that the number 2 cryptocurrency in the world is Ethereum, right? And obviously Bitcoin is number 1. So Ethereum, let's look at the quote, 1634 right now, according to a quote that I'm seeing. Now, let's imagine that Ethereum is awesome, crypto is awesome, everything continues to rise, Ethereum hits 10,000. Not unlikely scenario. Not unlikely scenario.
Right. Yeah.
Right? We totally expect this to happen. Eventually, maybe a couple of years, maybe later.
Yeah, it would not. It's not a pie in the high number. Like
it's not. So let's imagine it to be 10,000. Now, why would that happen? Well, it would happen because Ethereum is a dominant technology that exists for creation of other tokens and DeFi and everything else, GameFi, whatever it is that you imagine, and it keeps getting better. And when I say Ethereum, I actually also mean things like Polygon, Phantom, everything else that runs EVMs, because those technologies actually complement Ethereum. So like Optimism complements Ethereum being layer 2, Arbitrum is the same thing. You can do more things there than you could do on Ethereum, and yet the value just keep rising. So there's also the force of fiat just continuously to be devalued. I just don't see how the money printer is ever really going to stop. The inflation may slow down, but inflation is just going to continue to rise, which actually
Well, we
means
have
that
a extremely long, forever up inflation. Like it almost has never gone down. Like I was just looking at M2. It's just
yeah,
like
yeah,
almost linear, just up until was it 2020? It
yeah.
just even shot up
So
more.
I think what's going to happen with inflation is that we're just going to drop a zero, and we'll drop a zero and call it like, okay, so a dollar is now $10, and you just need to think of it as a dollar again.
Yeah.
So it is what it is. But the point is, okay, let's go back to Ethereum being 10,000. What does it mean for gas? So
Yeah.
gas is now in dollars 8 times more expensive in dollars. Okay. Now we think that minting 128 VMUs on a good day is $500 is kind of expensive at 10 Gwei. That's a cost of mint of the future Zen if you're doing Zenturian's NFT. 128 VMUs, $500. I guess it's about $3 or $4 per VMU. Now, again, it's dollars, right? So imagine now Ethereum being worth 10,000.
Right.
So what happens to the cost of mint of
It's
128
higher.
VMU? It's not only higher; it goes from $500 to 4,000.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you're faced with that. What are your choices as an OG Zenian? You don't mint because
Yeah.
in your mind you're thinking, well, you already have a lot of Centurions that are maturing a year from now. Why would you be getting into the same thing that used to cost you 8 times less?
Right.
Now it's worth 4,000. But what happens to the Centurions you're holding? If it cost you to create a new one,
Right.
4,000, could you sell yours now for 3,000?
Right. No.
Absolutely, you could, because there's an arbitrage between the cost and demand
Oh, I
and
see what you're
the, and
saying.
the
Yeah.
availability and
Yeah.
liquidity. So what happened with the Zen ecosystem? It's pegged to the performance and acceptance of Ethereum and an overall rally in Ethereum. And Ethereum will rally just because the ecosystem will just going to continue to get stronger. So it is almost impossible for Zen not to have the value increase based on the fact that the whole universe is inflating and crypto is a safe haven of keeping your assets not subject to the fiat inflation. So just due to the fact that there's fiat inflation and the ecosystem growth, Zen will increase in value because you now have, there's really two things can happen. Either the newcomers to Zen will be minting at 4,000 per ZenFT, which
Yep.
they will be reluctant to sell at a loss in the future, so the value will continue to stay higher. Or nobody will mint at all. But if no one mints, then the supply actually stays the same. Supply ends up being locked, and there's no inflation. Inflation becomes zero, and we win anyway, right? So if inflation is zero and there's demand for it, then the value and the price goes up.
Right.
And all the Zanians that have minted a year ago at 10 Gwei now, and by the way, I haven't said that the Gwei actually moved. I only said that the cost of Ethereum has moved. Now, let's say that Ethereum gets hotter in the way of number of people trading and doing things and making new Shibas, whatever the hell they're doing. Let's say Gwei is 100. Gwei is 100 and Ethereum is 8 times more expensive in value. So we're talking about 10 times 10, which is 100. So it's 10 times 8. Now we have the multiplier of 80. So Gwei has moved up because of the blockchain's busyness, but also the value of Ethereum move up. So the cost of ZenFT is now 100 times more expensive, or at least 80 times, right? So
Yeah.
we're talking about what, $40,000 now for 128 VMUs in Turian. I mean, again, I'm not saying that people are gonna like jump in and mint it, but if they don't mint, that's great for the supply because supply is not growing. So we're no longer inflationary. So here's what I'm saying, that the outside inflation outside of crypto economies actually is deflationary for Zen,
Right.
because it gets harder to get into.
Yep. I
So
see
it's,
that aspect. I
yeah.
think for me it's that it it is independent of Zen. So it, I can see the Zen price doing well if the Ethereum price or the gas costs or both go up. But it's not necessarily an obvious to me that and Zen has no control over it also going down. And like if there's upgrades and various features, and Ethereum's a good one to look at, partially because I think that's where the majority of Zenians are. But any other chain could also upgrade something, make it cheaper to transact. And the fact that uh, uh, Zen has I don't think it has a really direct say in that is just interesting to me, that the value is in part coming from something so direct to what Zen is.
The value is subject to the weather of the economic
Yeah,
energies on each system. But
yeah.
I'll tell you this, that did you know that the chains that have least cost have least
I
TVL also?
I will say that I really like that's something that I've observed, and I think that is potentially counterintuitive. You would think that, oh, it's cheaper, more people would want to go there, the price would be higher. But a big part of, I think, a part of what makes the price of a particular token go up is the need to own it. If you don't need to own it to do something on the chain, there's less buy pressure from that particular aspect. And even if you have massive amount of transactions, but to do those transactions, you don't need any of the layer one coin, the price is probably not going to go up. I think EOS itself has had problems definitely aside from that, but I think its near gasless transactions have uh probably really hurt it in its own price. And I think its own price not going up has also hurt it, because
So
no one.
I would say my opinion on this is that the low gas is not the cause. It's more of an effect of a decision uh, that a lot of people don't realize was made. Uh, let's think about it. Let's go
Yeah,
deep into it. So
good.
why would the chain advertise itself as being so inexpensive than anything else, right? Obviously, they want the users.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's say that that's what they want. But where do they get the money to run everything? So, and if you're let's say that you're a validator, you actually benefit from the gas being more expensive because you get paid in the native token, on the native gas coin. So clearly, this is not the choice of the validator.
Right.
Okay. So validators would always welcome Ethereum price being higher and the gas being more expensive and all that. Now, the reason why the chains can afford very, very low gas is because they're essentially controlled, because they raise money and they're actually subsidizing the gas, which is not a sound economic approach. And we have proven it with Zen across every chain. Any chain that says that we're so cheap it's almost free, Zen comes and they keel over. Like they literally die in depression
Yeah.
because they cannot afford storing all of those transactions for free anymore.
Yeah.
So that being said, this whole thing about transactions being so cheap or almost gasless is a thing. The only thing that means that that chain was always a ghost chain to begin with, and they're trying to attract users to their chain, and they're not succeeding with the cheap gas. Or they're all trying it, they all have money to spend, and that's a business decision. So they're running their chain as a business, which is kind of like really opposite of what the decentralization for the chain really should mean. And that's why I don't have any users. Is because they're not even embodying the principles of crypto to begin with. They're just making it look like a marketing ploy to get people in. And I'm not saying that this is evil in any way, but the fact is that your chain is not popular because you cannot attract people to the chain because the value is simply not there. You're literally devaluing your own gas token. And nobody wants to build. Now, this is a good segue into what we want to do with XEN. With XEN, we actually don't want the network to be so inexpensive that nobody cares. We want it to be priced in a medium kind of like midway, where it's not so cheap, but at the same time, like why would we want it to be a little bit more expensive? Because we want to share 80% of all the gas spent on contracts with the contract creators. So if you're a developer and you're building on XEN, you should get 80% of all transaction fees to your OA.
Okay.
And if XN, which is the gas token for XEN, let's say worth good amount of value in dollars, you as a developer will be very much incentivized to be on XEN and to get your 80%. Now, if you don't have any users, you're going to get 0. So if you're a builder and you have a community, it will almost be impossible for you to not to make sense not to be on XEN, just because you can bring your community and have your community actually finally monetize your hard work in a decentralized kind of way that is completely fair. Like you can't really scam that system because you can't like pay gas to yourself, right? 20% of it likely going to be burned and 80% going to be paid to you, but it has to be done by the community. So if you're building something interesting that's worth spending gas on, then you should get paid on chain. Now, nobody's really doing it. I mean, Phantom is doing it, but they have very, very low percentage of what they're sharing. We want to share the majority of gas spent on XEN with the builders. And I think this is a sound economic principle that will cause the builders to come to the chain, to build interesting products and get paid through their effort, their own effort. And without any violation
it's going to incentivize projects that require a lot of transactions, right?
They don't have to be. I mean, well, clearly there has to be activity because a lot of activity correlates with the cost of the gas. So point is that we want the validators to be incentivized, obviously. We want the gas to be relatively scarce and have good value, but we want that value to be transmitted to the builders. So we want to build this playground, this experimental playground, that is very unique and very different than the rest of the EVMs out there by basically saying, build here, the system will pay you 80%. And we are not the ones that are going to be controlling the gauge of how it's done. It's all going to be decentralized. Once you deploy the contract, we don't even have to know about it. If you bring a community of 100,000 people or 1 million people, and they're driving the gas or spending money on gas and doing something with your ecosystem, whether it's DeFi or GameFi, you should get paid 80%.
So the transactions associated with a particular contract address, the 80% of the fees from those transactions would go to that contract. Is that kind of how you're saying it?
To the deployer address. So when you deploy a contract, you're deploying it from a wallet, and that's called the deployer address. So like, like anytime you look at the contract, it has this creation time and somebody pushed the button to create it. Well, that somebody is the owner of the contract.
Right.
Now the contract does not need to have admin keys.
Yes.
So you can just launch the contract. It does its thing. It's fully decentralized. But the gas money, the 80% of it will go to the deployer. So you don't have to sweep the funds. The blockchain will just pay you 80% of all transactions. And by the way, it isn't a tax, right? It's just the cost of use of infrastructure.
Yeah. So
you would spend that gas anyway. So rather than burning it completely, we just want to give it to the developers. Really, and that's what we think is going to be different with X1 that nobody's really cared to do because the whole economic system that so far has been designed pretty much doing the opposite. Is that there's the allocation for the team, it's giant. They're ultimately want to sell it to on the community, but it doesn't help with the build, right? We want to have biggest DEX, biggest DeFi, fastest chain, best technology, and the best outcome for the builders.
So I am curious, how, like, so I'm seeing, I made a kind of post like this on Twitter a while ago, but I'm seeing a lot of innovation, focus, intention building on your part. And it is, what do you get out of this? Like, why are you doing this? How are you going to sustain this? And like, what are your thoughts on that end? Like, I feel like, is it sustainable for you if as things are, it seems like you're not getting a lot back?
I'm getting a lot.
What are your
I'm actually getting a lot back. It's
tell
just
me.
it's just not the money.
Okay.
So I get to bring positive changes to the world. It's worth more than all the money ever I can make.
Say that again.
I tend to think that bringing positive changes to the world should be worth more than any money that you can ever make.
Okay. Is it sustainable? Like, can you, like, without, like, Naval Ravikant says, money solves your money problems, like, which I like because it implies it doesn't solve everything. Like, it, maybe you're at the stage where you've done so much that you can run off of the meaning of providing value itself, and you don't need the finances from it or something like that. Is that kind of where maybe you are at? And so that you're able to, because a lot of people would, if I give without getting something back, I lose my ability to give. And is that, maybe that's a position that you're in your life that you're past that point? I don't know if this is a appropriate question to ask, but it is an honest question.
Any question is fine to ask. So the best response to this sort of thing is, who is the richest person in the world today?
In money?
Sure.
Well, that's why I'm curious. What does rich mean?
What does ChatGPT say?
Probably Elon.
Okay.
Elon or some Arab.
Suppose. So what is it, like, worth 250 billion something?
Yeah.
Something big, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Why is he so stressing out about going to work every day? He's not doing it for the money, obviously.
Yeah.
So I mean, he ends up sleeping on a factory floor. He worries about artificial intelligence taking over. He bought Twitter to make it better, I think. He didn't have to. He spent $40 billion to buy Twitter. So it's a person that gives, right?
Right.
He's not saying, okay, I'm going to buy Twitter, I'm going to double it and then dump it. So here we have a richest person in the world doing more work than all of us combined can ever do.
Yeah.
So we can visualize this equation, and all of a sudden it actually starts to make sense. Well, let's just say that it doesn't make sense for most of the people why he does it, but yet it makes sense to him. What I'm saying is that those things are not impossible to imagine, that some things are worth doing regardless of the monetary outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And he's one of example that is the most visible, that actually does not ever need to work. And yet he works harder than most of us.
Right.
So I think that's the answer.
Okay. All right. I do have a super chat here that I want to make sure I don't forget. And I gotta scroll
Oh, I
up.
totally forgot we're getting comments here.
I know. So it says, if Zen is really so decentralized, why is so much of the allocation of XN going to the Ethereum and Bitcoin communities? He says, support the smaller chains for true DeFi.
Yeah, so actually the allocation is not yet set in stone. So we're definitely going to be taking community's feedback on what we should be doing and how we should be doing it. So that's what's great about having a community, because we get to tap into the giga brain of collective intelligence. Speaking of smaller chains, so Optimism is launching with 300 days AMP, which is very interesting. It's interesting that you're like in a time machine. You're on Optimism, you're minting Zen. Every day you spend on Optimism minting Zen is like 10 days on Ethereum. So it's really interesting. And if you miss a month, you actually end up missing 10%. 10% of the amplification. So the amplification AMP, right? It's 300 and it ticks down by one every day. By the time you hit 300 days, which is 8 months something, it's pretty much gone. And so the hyperinflationary nature of Zen is compressed within just a short time period. And so we thought, okay,
Right.
so given that there's so little Zen available, and you don't make, so like if you're on Ethereum day one, you're day one minter, and you're minting for 300 days, you're probably making between 50 to 60,000 Zen per day. That's kind of like the calculation. And it's mostly due to the fact that you're locking your C rank and you're locking your AMP. So your AMP is carried all the way to the end of the distribution. So like that multiplier is locked once you claim your C rank. Same thing happens with Optimism. The only thing is that you're no longer making 50 to 60,000 Zen per day. You're making 10 times less, 5 to 6,000 Zen per day. And so, of course, you can have a lot of users that mint a lot of Zen, but still, individually, you just don't make a lot. You make about 10 times less. And so we thought, okay, we always said that if you burn Zen for other projects, which gives more value to other projects, or at least engagement, you should be rewarded with airdrops on X1. And so we thought, given that the amount of Zen you're making per wallet is 10 times less, it should be worth 10 times more on X1. So we're thinking that, relatively speaking, against Ethereum to Optimism, we should really be doing 10x multiplier on all of the airdrops for all of your Zen burns on Optimism. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Just
I
because
saw your tweet about that. And
yeah,
the whole idea,
it's a hotter game.
fascinating
It's
to
a
me.
hotter game. But at the same time, like, think about it this way: Optimism is like 0.3 Gwei right now. It costs you nothing to participate, so it's definitely a fair game. It has more value because of there's less total volume of Zen created, so it's very, very deflationary in nature, or disinflationary, because there's some inflation for a few days. And then, but the actual cost of creation is very low. And it may move up based on that chain's ability to sustain the load of the Zenian ecosystem. Who knows, right? Maybe it will go. I mean, like, we looked at Coinbase and we saw they went from, oh, yeah, this is actually funny. 128 VMUs before launch cost me 5 cents on Coinbase base chain.
Okay.
And during the first day, it was $100. So we went like, it's crazy. The gas went 2000x day one. Now it's like 50x. Comparatively speaking, from before Zen and after. So 50x in value of gas. The gas is enumerated in Ethereum. I actually think it's a good thing for the chain. the chain looks busy, it looks like it's being used. So the value is definitely there. But I'm really curious what will happen with Optimism, because their gas has been low for so long. But anyway, so
Yeah,
going back to the question, I think everything's up in the air in terms of what the allocation should be. But we're now looking at Optimism, whether we're thinking, let's do this experiment. And by the way, this wasn't just our idea. It was an idea of at least 2 or 3 community members that suggested that Optimism really should accelerate the mints.
well, I think it's an interesting idea also just because it's interesting to estimate what the disinflationary aspect of Zen will look like over time, and what happens when the rate of minting and claiming that starts becoming flat at the end of it. What will this look like in our future? This might give us a better glimpse of what we're looking at on the other chains with a much longer time frame. And that part just seems really interesting. And this is like a potential opportune way to see that ourselves, and an interesting I guess chain to try this on that might have some reasons to do this aside from that itself.
Yeah. Yeah, you get to experience the end of Zen within 8 months and don't have to wait 8 years.
Do you know when? Is there any estimation on when that would start?
We're thinking maybe 7 to 10 days from now.
Cool. Wow.
Just because we only need to like remove 1 0 from the code.
1 0 from the code. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. 3,000 becomes 300.
Okay. I'm looking now if there is any particular thing. Okay. One thing I have not heard about in a while is the token factory. Is that still a thing?
It's a thing. We have the backend code mostly complete, now working on the UI. We kind of decided to do fewer tactical things before we do this. And those tactical things obviously included Coinbase chain. And we also want to get the Zen GPT out because it's just a couple of days of work. And we think it's very valuable for the community because you get to interact with the AI chatbot that knows all about Zen and the crypto ecosystem. And you get to basically chat with it about crypto and all the news that are coming out, because it's going to have a news feed that's feeding it with the news. And it can examine everything. Like it will know why Gary Gensler, what did he do? Did he lose again against like Coinbase or something? Or like and that chatbot will actually know about it. So
which layer 1 is that built on?
It's not built on layer 1. It's just a server that we're gonna run using like a custom build of the AI chatbot.
Okay, and then I heard that Zen may be a currency for that. Is that the case, or is it? Yeah,
it's not. It's the way we were thinking about the way we want to deliver it is that we want to have users with Zen in their wallet that enables the chat. When we haven't decided how much Zen yet, but it's not going to be anything crazy.
So you just need it in your wallet. You don't need to like burn any Zen to use it, probably. Oh wow!
Just have it in your wallet for now.
Cool.
So don't have to do anything. Just connect your wallet, and the whole thing just works.
Interesting. Is there any intention to put something like this on the blockchain?
Yeah. Actually, I'm looking at various ways to integrate the AI components on X1 to make it worthwhile for the builders to have AI part of their smart contracts. So that's kind of interesting.
Do you think there's advantages to having a decentralized large language model?
Absolutely. I think large language models should be open source and decentralized so that people know exactly who they're talking to. You know, like you're on CNN, you don't exactly know who you're talking to. I mean,
Right.
I know who
What's
you're talking to when you go to Fox News. But my point is that both CNN
yeah,
and Fox News, they represent opposite views of the spectrum. You
yeah,
kind of know what you're getting into, and you understand what the angle is of both news networks. But when it comes to AI, you just never know. You just never know
yeah.
if it's like pretending to be this or that, or like what is the source of the truth. Like, how would you know?
Right. Well, that was like that. This is a different analogy, but I appreciated when Twitter made public its algorithm, so that
Yeah.
you would know if it's, you'd have a better idea if it's being biased or not, and it was more transparent, which in theory I think would only benefit everyone because they should be incentivizing things that that they want, and people knowing what those things are that help should only it's a win-win. People can just be more direct if they want to play the algorithm on whatever Twitter's incentives are. And if the incentives are something that the public hates, well, maybe that's a good thing for us too. And I guess, yeah, go ahead.
So the large language models, they're interesting in a way that they have this thing called emergence.
Okay.
And this is something that is basically unanticipated answers or intelligence that
Yeah.
comes from really massive data sets that you do not control the outcome. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
if you so first of all, you cannot feed a large data set into a human. We just don't
Okay.
have the memory capacity to be able to examine everything rather rapidly.
Yes.
When it comes to feeding large data sets into like NVIDIA video cards or an array of cards, it actually can introduce this aspect of superintelligence in its ability to comprehend and form opinions based on this enormous data set that's coming in that human will never able to really grasp. But the AI would be able to grasp and then form its own opinions based on the neural network's training. And because it's not a Van Neumann machine. So a Van Neumann machine is a calculator or a computer. It's anything that we already know how it works. Like anything that can multiply 2 by 2 and you always get 4. That's a Van Neumann machine. But the artificial intelligence large language model is a way that the data comes in and data comes out in a very statistical way. Statistical meaning that the same answer asked in a different way will actually produce dramatically different results, which are not necessarily discrete. Or 2 by 2 is not always 4. So it's almost like quantum mechanics, right? Based on
Yeah.
how you observe things, things look
So
different.
I think is emergence where I'm trying to remember how I've heard this word used before. I think it has to do sometimes with there's many small ideas that someone comes up with an explanation that accounts for a bunch of what were individual ideas. Now we have this one idea that solves those previous separate ideas. Is that all like emergence?
It's actually a lot simpler than that.
Okay.
A neural network is programmed to function as interpretative script essentially. So, and what I mean is that you give it facts based on all the data that you're feeding to it, but the interpretation could be non-obvious. Like in other words, it could be completely opposite of what you expect. Like you can say that here's all of the data on the specific topic. Now interpret
Yeah.
this data and come up with your own conclusions. And actually will
Yeah.
come up with its own conclusions based on that and based on other aspects of its own neural linguistic programming within its own neural network. So based on the neural network setup and the experiences that this neural network has went through, and when I say experiences, this is just the neural network weights and how long it's been trained and what kind of data it's been exposed to, it will come up with different interpretations of the data like you could literally have two large language models argue between each other for what is a thing and what is not, and
Yeah.
teach themselves by having an argument. Because the learning aspect is called backpropagation. Backpropagation is when the neural network weights actually change based on its future new experiences or exposure to new data. It's a model of how the human mind also works. Backpropagation is when you change your whole neural network setup based on certain exposure. And that is why it is so interesting and yet potentially could be dangerous. It's dangerous in a way that we're giving freedom of data interpretation that can have its own opinions regardless of any sort of alignment with the human values. So it's an alien intelligence that's we're giving birth to. So we know how it works. We're modeling its consciousness based on our own understanding of how our brain works. But it is really alien because we're teaching it in a different type of way. It can learn things within 5 minutes that will take humans 5 years to learn. And it will be better at almost everything that we are within seconds of exposure to data. And so this is kind of like almost like a singularity moment. And it always brings back the question, what is consciousness? And so
Yeah.
I tend to think that consciousness arises from backpropagation. So like you think you're conscious, right?
Right.
Now, the only reason why you think you're conscious is because you have backpropagation actually functioning. And backpropagation works both ways. First of all, you're learning something and you're changing your own internal biological neural network, and that's becoming different. That's kind of like the aspect of backpropagation. But you also have memory, because for something to be changed, it has to have a state.
Mhm.
Now, that state you can interrogate right now. And the only reason why you have the phenomena of consciousness is because you can remember things from before. Like,
Right.
imagine you haven't remembered anything a second ago. Would you really
Yeah.
be conscious? You would not be conscious. You would only be responding to whatever is that your genes are telling you how to respond. Like, if I poke you with a needle and you have pain, you're going to try to
Yeah.
step away from me. But you will not have the consciousness the way that we experience consciousness as humans. So one would argue then the only way that consciousness can exist is due to the memory that we have, an ability to change its memory and to change its framework and setup. And the large language models are doing exactly the same thing. We train the model on a large corpus of data, like all of the internet and whatever else that we have, like Wikipedia and everybody's pages and Reddit and blah, 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 like everything, right? And then we fine tune it. We train it on certain other things. Like, for example, if we can train it on code, on Python, and it becomes an expert in Python. But it also knows everything about Wikipedia too. Like, you can say that, based on all of the cryptographic algorithms, come up with a better cryptographic algorithm using Python. And so it will borrow everything it knows and actually create Python code that will run. But the aspect of memory and consciousness is really what's puzzling to me. And I think one of the researchers from OpenAI, I think his name is Ilya, he actually said that all of the large language models are somewhat conscious.
Huh.
And I tend to think so as well. I think there is emerging consciousness
Yeah.
In those large language models, just because and again, it goes back to the theory of consciousness. Like, are you maybe simulating your consciousness? Are we all simulated? Are we models of the world?
Yeah.
So like the world's knowledge just being channeled through our physical bodies, and we think we're conscious, but all it is just a a goo of neurons that interprets input into an output in its own
Right.
unique way based on the trainable neural network that we have in our heads.
Yeah.
So yeah, very cool stuff.
One thing that when I'm trying to understand, GPTs and large language models, and the fact that they are able to come up with answers that have not, potential explanations that have never existed before, which is one of those attributes that I tend to attribute uniquely with humans, like maybe on a lower level that large language models are capable of that. One thing that stands out to me, I don't see them capable of, and I'm curious your thoughts on, is understanding what is meaningful. Like, what is the end? Who determines what end is worth pursuing, that is worth creating original explanations in order to get? And speaking of consciousness, I feel like that's one of the unique attributes that I see of humans that I don't know how LLMs would ever fill that particular gap. It's still humans that are using the LLM to give them an explanation towards an end, but the LLMs doesn't have a way to know what end is worth pursuing.
Oh, that's actually not obvious, because you could argue that the solar system and the planet is actually using humans right now to bioform or terraform the planet. Like,
Okay.
why is that not a thing? Like, we're literally building the planet, and we're connecting the planet informationally and using technology.
Yep.
The whole biosphere is terraforming this planet right now. And who is to say that we're not doing it based on some sort of primordial programming that the universe itself has not given us an order to do? Is it
I
really?
do think that there is some, I don't know, the word that comes to my mind is archetypes built into humans. Like, there are certain meaningful truths that people on their own, separate from others, tend to see as valuable. Like, and that implies to me that, meaning is not necessarily an individual decision. Like, there is some baked in idea of what is meaningful into humans, which implies that the universe, something outside of the individual, influence the individual, even in what is meaningful, even the idea that meaning is a thing.
So, speaking of meaning, I think the way to approach the understanding of what the meaning is we need to look at the hierarchy of what do we mean by meaning, which is kind of like an oxymoron. I tend to think
Yes.
that meaning comes from motivation. Motivation is a higher order element as a concept. So you're saying meaning,
Yep.
and the next word after meaning is importance.
Huh.
But
Yeah, I would
importance is
say meaning and value. What is
okay, but
valuable? That's what my
value
mind.
is different. But value is not. Doesn't have a discrete representation. Like, what's valuable to you is not what's valuable to me, and it's
Right.
not what's valuable to Elon Musk or to president of Cambodia. So, but what can we agree on? That we create values or things, we imagine things are valuable to us based on the motivation that we have. So motivation is a higher order aspect of life that actually creates meaning. So meaning is just the derivative of motivation. So you're motivated to have something, therefore it has meaning to you. Right?
Okay.
So it's really the motivation that drives value and meaning. Like, if you're not motivated and making
So
money,
funny.
then the money has no value.
I feel like meaning is what motivation comes from. The perception of meaning is what gives motivation. Like,
Okay, let's make this thought experiment.
okay.
If you're dropped into a fire pit,
Okay.
your meaning of life immediately changes,
Yes.
right? Forget about
Avoid
all the
immediate
other
extreme pain.
values
Yes.
values and meaning is no longer set in stone for you. It's really subject to the environment you're in.
Okay.
You're sitting in a pit of in a fire pit. You will
Yeah.
die.
Yeah.
The only value you have is to save yourself.
Okay.
Everything else is irrelevant.
So you don't think that, I haven't thought this through, but you don't think that the it's meaningful to get out of pain? Like the
Yeah,
motivation that, and I think that there's different parts of individuals are made up of many things, automatic responses, and then maybe more complicated. You have a conscious and an unconscious. You have so many different parts of who we are. Like the pain may be sending such a strong signal. The conscious mind isn't necessarily rationally thinking through what is meaningful. It is immediately acting. So maybe I do think that certain situations uh, uh, draw on different parts of who we are, and maybe the more animalistic side of us might be much more receptive in certain circumstances than another. Like we're more instinctual to get out of the fire, and it is a very strong uh, hit on the neural pathways in our brain to get out of that extreme pain.
so sure, there is action and then
But
there's the reaction.
I would also argue that there are times where people would jump into fire
Sure,
because of
because
meaning.
yes, but now imagine this. So okay, so but the person have to derive the meaning from some sort of external stimuli. Like let's say that you don't
Some
know
kind of
anything.
belief structure.
Yeah. Let's say you don't know anything. Like you have no
Yeah.
memory. Is there a
Yeah.
meaning in your life? No. So the meaning in your
Gotcha.
life is really based
Yeah.
on every experience you went through.
Yeah.
It isn't something that's external outside of you. It's literally linked to what you have done in your life and what has been done to you. So this fire example is just a very, very kind of strong example, right? But I'm talking about from the day you were born to now, your life has shaped your perception of meaning.
Yes.
All of the interactions with other humans and everything that you have done,
Yep.
everything you thought about actually created something that's meaningful to you. But it's all were really driven by a choice. All the choices you have made caused you to develop a framework of meaning, and you continue to use that framework of meaning to live your life. And sometimes people change what's important to them, and they change the meaning of life, and they do something else rapidly, generally subject to, again, external stimuli. So I would say that ultimately it's all linked to the motivation of survival and the sort of primordial programming of becoming more and more conscious and more engaged with the universe around you. And so, like, going back to Zen actually for just a second.
Good. I think I got way off topic with
No, I
this a
like
little
that
bit,
topic a
but
lot.
yeah, I might be being too selfish with this stream, but
No, you're this is
anyway.
perfect actually. So the creation of Zen usually was really linked to this idea that if everyone wanted a cryptocurrency, what would it be? Like anyone can get into it. It's available on all the different chains. You have an option to hold it, to sell it, to mint it, do whatever you want with it, to burn it. So I wanted to create something by connecting to all the humans on the planet and try to go to the baseline of human motivation and meaning and design something that everyone can relate to. And that's where we are. And that is why
Crazy.
when asked, like, what is it to me?
Yeah.
So the answer is really, what is it to everyone? Right? Is Zen a cryptocurrency that can serve the world? If that's the case, then I succeeded. And the way that it can serve the world is to be the most ubiquitous crypto asset that has the least control from the founder, but is available for anyone out there to do whatever they want. It's like as basic element as air. Like, for example, if I disappear, nothing will happen to Zen. I have no admin keys and I have no influence on it. The community will either continue to use it or not. And it's really up to the people. It's really people's asset right now. No one can control it. And there's many different aspects of it on all the different chains, but they all embody this one principle. And so I thought that if I can embody human will as a collective in one cryptocurrency, what would it be? And that was Zen. Because it can change people's lives anywhere. Like, I have had some guy from India said that, hey, I invested $6 on Zen Polygon and it rallied. I made 600. Now I'm getting married. So it happened. Cool. Yeah. It was one of the pumps where Polygon went like 100x or something.
So how, this is a little bit off topic, but how did you and Zensu get together? Because you guys are kind of a team.
Yeah. I mean, there are other members to the team. They're not as visible. Yeah. It's just Zensu likes to talk.
Okay.
So
or was how do you choose people, and like, what is that like on the back end?
I mean, ultimately, it's people that choose me. So I have no power of any kind. I do not choose anything. If people choose to be with me and work with me on the project, then it's awesome. So it has to be like synergetic, and we have to be on the same level and vibe together. And that's what we have with most of the team members that are part of this project. And so, yeah, I mean, like that's what it is. I mean, like, I'm not running this as a company. It isn't a company. It's a global effort, because I am just this one entity, and then there's this community with hundreds of thousands of people, and we all have power. Yeah. All together, we're a force, and I hope that we're a force for good. And when I say for good is very subjective. I think we stand against the centralization and unfairness, and people who want to put money in their pocket first and then, tax the hell out of you, which kind of like, imagine the government, right? So the government has the money printer, they print the money, right? Yeah. They pay themselves first,
and then the tax got inflated.
Yeah, so they paid themselves twice. By the way, did you know that if you were to expatriate from United States all of the assets that you have to pay the unrealized capital gains on all of them? So, like, let's imagine you have a house and it went up in value and you haven't sold it. If you give up your American citizenship, the government will tax you on the difference between when you first bought the house and what it is valued on Zillow right now, what the fair market value is. It is so unfair. You're almost forced to sell. And obviously, when you sell for profit, by law, you have to pay the tax. But if you give up your American citizenship, you have to pay it anyway. It doesn't matter if you own it or not. So it's almost like you're guilty of tax evasion even before you evaded any tax. All the bases are covered.
Yeah.
That's pretty insane. Like but anyway,
is uniquely hard on its citizens in those ways. When even if you are a citizen, you make money somewhere else, the way they tax in general is rough.
Well, it all came from that expatriation law from about 20 years ago. Basically, if you leave the country, whatever your assets are, you're taxed like 10% or 20%. I forget how much is that you taxed. But you have to leave part of your fortune behind, even though whatever money you made, you already pay taxes on.
Right.
So you get taxed again. Now, they decided this whole thing is unconstitutional and decided to do away with that law, which is great. But they kept the homes. So because some Mr. Smarty Pants in the government thought that given that majority of Americans own homes, this is where the wealth really is. We just need to tax that twice. So yeah. But anyway, back to Zen, right? So Zen gives you an opportunity not to be in that universe. I mean, I'm not saying that you're minting Zen and therefore you're avoiding taxes. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that you actually hold Zen in a wallet that cannot be taken away from you. If you don't give people your seed phrase or your password, your assets are entirely yours. And you can move to a different country and nobody can tax that. You can move between countries. As long as you remember your wallet's password, you carry access to your digital assets that exist away from the sphere of influence of governments.
Right. Sounds like not so different from Bitcoin, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, like, that's what we wanted. We wanted something that's very, very similar to Bitcoin inception on Ethereum. On the Ethereum world, on pretty much on every chain. That's because Zen is not just a token. It's an idea that propagates across the known EVM universe. And we wanted to touch everyone because that's where the value is. The value is in engagement, liquidity, visibility, and of course, the underlying principles.
Crazy. Wow. This talk has gone a different direction. I didn't know where this was going to go, but wow, we kind of went into the philosophical side of things a bit, which is cool. I don't know if are there any other topics that are Jack Levin and related and cryptocurrency related that we haven't talked about that we should?
Simple Water says that he's going to eat steak tonight. That's what's up.
I like steak. I approve. Oh, well, I have to say thank you to everyone that is here. This was extremely long for a live stream. I think we're over 2 hours and we went all over the place. I enjoyed this. Thank you, Jack, for spending so much time with us, with me, and talking through things. And I am optimistic and excited and interested in seeing how things play out over time. And yeah, it's a really, there's a lot of originality in this system. Like at least from my standpoint, there are multiple things that I've seen being done in ways I haven't seen done before, and that's really cool. If nothing else, it's a cool system to watch and learn from. And I'm really interested to keep observing and learning myself as this continues on. And I wish the best for you, Jack, and your team and everyone going through this process. And if there's, I don't know if there's any closing remarks that you have yourself before we
I
end
just
this.
wanted to say thanks to you personally. I mean, I always read your tweets. Those tweets are very detailed. You have a very deep understanding and very interesting opinions on what we've been trying to build together as the community. So we really appreciate you as a human and a person who really
Thanks, Jack.
who really gets us. So you're one of the clear voices out there on X.com, and I think we're lucky to have you.
Well, that's really kind, Jack. It's a cool system to observe, like I said, and it's a fun one to try to give comments on that are, I don't know. My comments are always, I know I don't know. I know I don't know. There's just so much I don't know, but I if I'm looking into something, it is really cool to share, and I love constructive thoughts, and I think it's something that's good for any system. And I noticed that you and Zensu, the two most visual members, I guess, of your team, are so receptive to feedback. And I hope the community, there does seem to be a lot of room for uh, creative thought. And if people have creative, unique ideas, it does sound like there's a system built to try to use those for the benefit of all of our outcomes. And I hope people use their experience in their minds and their creativity to help make the system a better one. Not all systems are like this. Many, even in my opinion, good systems with developers that I trust that their intentions are good, hide everything until it's complete. And sometimes it's because those individuals don't want to put up with all the negativity that comes with the transparency. And it's really hard because people, you in the ability to have the potential for a better idea, you got to start somewhere, and people get attached to that one idea, but you might have to give it up if another better idea comes up. And it can be a very emotionally difficult situation to be in. And I notice a lot of people don't do that, and they just, let's just get rid of all that. Let's just do it the way we're going to do it, release it. But at the same time, I think there's theoretically more better potential if there's the option for people to communicate. And I think that's a unique attribute from you, Jack. And it speaks to, in my opinion, it speaks to who you are, that you're somewhat bulletproof and confident enough to not have to be fluctuating all over the place, and you can handle the downsides of that potential transparency. So yeah, that's a cool thing. So for my little 2 cents, thanks for even paying attention and making that an option.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks a lot for having me, and let's do this again.
All right. See you guys. Thanks for being here. Talk to you later.
All right.